Next stop everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS once again. I know it's been a couple weeks, but we're back, ready to talk some more classic Doctor Who with someone who hasn't been here on Next Stop Everywhere for a little while, but he's back and ready to talk a classic Tom Baker story. So everyone, please welcome back to the podcast one of our favorite people here on Next Stop Everywhere. Is certainly one of our favorite letter writers, Dave Proctor. How you doing, Dave?
Charles, I'm doing awesome. And I'm glad to be back. I was just looking at my Skype history. It's been since like May, I believe.
Yeah. So it's been a little while. How have you enjoying the summer?
Working hard,
Yeah.
getting out there, getting her done. It's been a good summer. Good to be out and about. Saw my first musical concert with people. It was pretty good.
Wow. What'd you go see?
It was a local event that came up, and it was some country bands. And I guess the mainliner was Low Cash.
Okay.
Which I did before. It's not my genre, but you know what? There were people, and it was social, and it was awesome.
Did you have some adult beverages?
I did not. It was my night to drive.
Oh.
But I actually,
Good for you. You're responsible. You're the designated driver.
Indeed.
All right. Well, that's
We
good.
were riding our bikes. How did I think of it? But no, it was not my night to do that. But there was lots of them being consumed there.
Well, as someone who just finally got to see his first movie for the past year and a half, when Nick and I talked Black Widow, so I kind of know how it feels to kind of get back into a semi-state of reality, at least before the COVID rates start going back up like they've been doing and probably shutting everything down again. Hopefully
Yeah, that
not.
Delta virus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first movie back too.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed listening to you guys review on Happiness and Darkness. So
Yes. Well, thank you very much. And we'll talk more about Happiness and Darkness a little later because apparently somebody is going to be joining Nick. So we'll talk about that. But for right now, we got to talk some Doctor Who, right? We haven't talked Doctor Who in a couple weeks, so I'm eager to talk about it. So here at episode 238, we're going to be discussing The Hand of Fear. And this is a fun one, and this is a notable one because this features the departure of Elisabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith in the classic era. So this is her last regular appearance. She, of course, returned for the Five Doctors in the 20th season of Doctor Who, and then, as modern era fans know, she returned in School Reunion and Stolen Earth Journey's End in the modern era. So this is not the last we see of Sarah, thankfully. In addition, of course, to the Sarah Jane Adventures, which she headlined and was a wonderful show until obviously she fell ill and then later passed. But this was her initial goodbye to Sarah Jane. And so I thought it was worth talking about. And I'm glad, Dave, that you're here to talk about it with me. And so before we get into all the background and everything, what's your general take from this story? Did you enjoy it?
it was pretty good. I don't think it was one of those real deep stories that makes you sit back and really contemplate life, but it was entertaining.
Right.
It had some misdirection here and there, and from the classic era, I'd have to put Sarah Jane on one of the tops. So seeing her go was a little sad, and it didn't seem like a super contrived reason to see her go. So that in that way, it was kind of a positive. A lot of times it just seems weird how they're just leaving them.
You mean especially in the modern era where they just kind of, they have to be stuck in a parallel dimension or just walk away, emotionally or something? that kind of thing.
I thought the worst one ever was William Hartnell when he let Susan go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he gets a chance for a great speech that you hear all over the place.
Classic
But hey,
speech.
a worn, torn, ravaged planet that's been all the life sucked out of it. You're staying. You're not going to get a word in edgewise. You're staying, and leaves. I'm like his only family in the universe. But this one was all right. It made sense, and the doctor made an effort to get her home,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean,
He blew it.
That's a big deal. Of course he did. The TARDIS
Yes.
takes you where you need to go.
Right.
And I'm glad they remembered that when she comes back.
Yeah, exactly. So, and obviously, as we know from the modern era, Sarah had some feelings that were, need to be resolved over the way she left. And so, so I take it since this was the first time, I'm guessing, you watched this story?
No, I'm slowly trotting through with all my other shows and everything, and I'm just a few stories past that one. So this year was the first time I'd seen it.
Okay.
And I watched it the second and third time in prep for this.
Okay. So then your reaction to the first time you saw it, what did you think, having presumably watched School Reunion before, right? So
Right.
so what did you make of seeing how Sarah Jane left the first time you watched it?
Well, the first thing was I didn't expect it. So it caught me off guard. It's not an episode where they make a big deal leading into it or anything. It just, there it is at the end.
Yeah.
So it surprised me. And she had been on there what I felt like was a long time, because when I watched it as a kid, I started out with some Tom Bakers, and then it would go back to Pertwee.
Right.
And I think they just kind of threw that with just a few Peter Davison after.
Mm-hmm.
They do like a little loop there, and there's so many Bakers that obviously that manipulates it. But she just seemed like a fixture of the show to me.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of people consider her to be the definitive classic era companion, maybe overall the definitive Doctor Who companion for a lot of people.
I'm not going to go out and say she's my absolute favorite, because I'd hate to slight somebody else, because I'm always trying to figure that out. But when I think Tom Baker's my doctor,
right?
When I turn one on, I go, oh, hey, it's Tom Baker. Oh, wait, it's one of the ones with Leela. Or, I'm like, And it's not to slight her at all. I think there were some interesting choices with that character, but I was like, oh, I like Sarah Jane.
So it's safe to say at least that Sarah Jane is your favorite Tom Baker companion.
Well, she's head and shoulders above Adric and those.
Well, that goes without saying. Yes. Yeah.
But
Adric, yes, definitely.
I'd have to say by a long shot. Leela is okay, and I think they do better with her in like some of the novels.
Yeah.
But by far she's the best.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm not really keen on the sailor dude, and I'm drawing a blank.
Oh,
on his
you mean
name.
Harry Sullivan?
Harry Sullivan.
Yeah.
He was like thrown in and then disappears for no reason. Then they mention him a few times, and then he died.
Well, the actor died. Yeah,
so
yeah.
You're like, yikes! Yeah. But I never got really on him. But I think that's a 2021 perspective, looking back on a 1970s character and seeing problems, and it kind of made it like,
Yeah, some companions I think have aged better than others.
Well, the chauvinism of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Doctor Who makes fun of it, so later.
And I'm sure, as much as, younger Doctor Who fans would hate to think of, eventually time will go on and someone 30 years down the road will make fun of their stuff just as much.
Yes.
And then
absolutely.
and then they'll be old and crusty like us, and then they'll be the ones trying to defend their eras to the future fans. So it's
They
all that
stepped
circle,
out and
that whole
tried to make
circle
fun
of
of
Doctor Who.
You remember you guys just did the Eaters of Light.
Yeah.
Yeah. That show right there, when why am I drawing a blank? The companion.
Bill or Nardle?
Yeah, Bill. Yeah,
Yeah.
she when she meets the Romans and she's discussing how she only likes girls. That's that sort of modern view of she was seen as the one stuck in the mud because she only liked girls.
Yeah. Yeah, that
The
was.
times change, and you got to,
Yeah, it's kind of, but and that was a nice little twist I thought during that episode.
Absolutely,
It was good.
it's not what some people think.
No,
How history goes.
she thought, here's Bill thinking she's all progressive, and turns out no, the Romans were into a little bit more than what she's into. So she kind of feels, like you said, a stick in the mud by comparison.
Indeed.
Yeah. So this story, Hand of Fear, written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin, who are the creators of K9, because they wrote the story that introduced him, the Invisible Enemy. They also wrote some notable stories in the classic era, including The Claws of Axos, The Three Doctors, The Armageddon Factor, which was the conclusion of the Key to Time storyline. So, and a bunch of others. So they're very notable, and it's written some great stories. Directed by Lenny Mayne, this story was the second serial from season 14 in 1976. So we're looking a year before the original Star Wars debuted. If you want to keep that in perspective. Featuring, of course, Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor, and like I said, Elisabeth Sladen in her last regular appearance as Sarah Jane Smith. And guest cast, we have Judith Paris, who played the female Eldrad in a rather stylish crystalline costume. So she's notable because she's been recently on episodes of The Crown on Netflix, and she was in the 2004 film adaptation of The Phantom of the Opera, based on the musical by Andrew Lloyd Webber. So thought that was interesting. Stephen Thorne plays the male Eldrad, the Castrian Eldrad, and he's notable because he has that great booming voice that makes great for a great over-the-top villain. He played Azal in a John Pertwee story, The Daemons, which we've talked about. He also played Omega in The Three Doctors. So if you remember how Omega used to kind of talk in this big booming voice, as this big disembodied entity. Well, that was Stephen Thorne as well, which was probably why they picked him up for this. And he also played the first Ogron in another John Pertwee story, Frontier in Space. Roy Skelton did the voice, played King Rokon, and he's notable because he was one of the, not the very first, but one of the early voices of the Daleks and the Cybermen on Doctor Who, and did that for quite a while in the original series. He also played the character of James Carver on a Big Finish Sarah Jane Smith audio adventure called Test of Nerve. And Rex Robinson plays Dr. Carter, and if he looks familiar, well, we just talked about him in The Three Doctors because he played Dr. Tyler in that one. So he's either Dr. Carter or Dr. Tyler, or he also played a character named Gebek in The Monster at Peladon, which was the penultimate John Pertwee era story. And he was also a subway engineer in Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, believe it or not.
Is that your favorite, the best one of the four?
That is my third of the Christopher Reeve movies. My third favorite.
Right.
Superman 3, of course, being my least favorite.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah. And for more on Superman, listen to Drunk Cinema this week because hopefully Zan and I will be talking the first Superman movie. So I'll just free plug that one right away.
You're not treating them as one movie like they were filmed?
No, we're gonna break them up like the theatricals. It's gonna be a lot shorter that way.
Because, of course. Because you'd be 8 hours discussing it.
Yeah, and don't think we couldn't do that. Zan and I could totally do an 8-hour discussion. as long as she doesn't pass out, if she's drinking. So, Glenn Houston played Professor Watson in this. He's the guy who phoned up his wife and kids and then tried to stay behind and help save the day, help save the nuclear power plant. That guy. He returned in a Peter Davison story, The Awakening, as a Colonel Ben Wolseley. And lastly, I have for cast Frances Pidgeon, who is the wife of the director, Lenny Mayne. Gee, I wonder how she got cast in this story. Nepotism it always works. So she actually was in a previous Jon Pertwee era story. She played Queen Thalira's handmaiden in The Monster of Peladon. So we had two veterans from The Monster of Peladon in the story. Now, trivia. This has got some interesting trivia this time, I think. When Elisabeth Sladen announced her intention to leave the show, Sarah was originally supposed to be killed off in a pseudo-historical story called The Lost Legion, involving aliens and the French Foreign Legion. But that was obviously never filmed, because the guy, Douglas Camfield, who was supposed to write the script, was unavailable, much to Elisabeth Sladen's relief, because she didn't want to be killed off or married off, like a lot of characters tend to do in soap operas or on Doctor Who sometimes. So she just wanted to leave and not make a big fuss about it. And that's kind of what she got. Sladen was also asked that Sarah's departure not be the main focus of the story because she felt the program was about the Doctor, not the companion.
Right.
So that's very selfless as an actor. You don't see much of that these days. Baker and Martin, apparently they intentionally did not write Sarah's departure scene. Instead, they left the script for that scene be rewritten by Elisabeth Sladen and Tom Baker based off of ideas from Robert Holmes, the script editor's original version. So it's kind of nice that Tom Baker and Elisabeth Sladen kind of got to do it the way they wanted to, I guess.
I read one other piece to that they for a very short time considered a story with the Brigadier.
Yeah, I was just about to get into that.
Oh, there you go.
Well, if you want to tell the story, go right ahead. I don't want to step all over you.
It wasn't available, so they didn't go that route.
Right.
I didn't have any details on it.
Okay, well, I've got the details, so.
You would.
I thought that was interesting. See, I try to cover your back here, So yeah, that script originally was supposed to feature the Brigadier, like you said, who had apparently been moved from unit to what was called the Extraterrestrial Xenological Intelligence Task Force, which, if you acronym that, it's EXIT, exit. Get it? To study UFO activities. And the brig was supposed to be killed off when he steered his spaceship into an Omegan kamikaze ship to prevent that ship from crashing into Earth. So they almost killed off the brig, which would have been horrible because he was so good in the Five Doctors and Battlefield.
Yes.
So we almost didn't get him in those stories. But thankfully they didn't film that because Nicholas Courtney was also not available.
Right. I always felt it was a shame he didn't show up more during the Tom Baker years.
Yeah. Well, I think they wanted to kind of get away from the Earthbound adventures. So, now because with the Doctor getting his, the exile was over from the Jon Pertwee era, that they decided to go off into space. And they felt that I think that the Brigadier was an Earthbound character and was associated with the Jon Pertwee era, along with the other actors like Benton or Sergeant, Captain Yates. So I think they just decided to try to move away from that era to give it more of a fresh start.
I think I would have appreciated it as a continuity. Maybe not.
Well, he was there in the early Tom Baker stories.
Right. Like up through the robot.
Yeah, the Android invasion, yeah. So
I don't have a problem. I understand trying to get away from that, but I think it gave it continuity. It was also a reason why whenever they came back to Earth, it was modern time, but a little further down the road because they couldn't keep crossing that timeline. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it was refreshing, kind of like when you haven't seen them at all, and all of a sudden they bring the Daleks back. You're like, hey, that's familiar. Jodie Whittaker, her first season, I felt like, man, I haven't seen none of this feels familiar, and I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I think she's a doctor, but I felt a little lost. New showrunner and all of that. A little continuity here and there would have been great. Plus, if you watched it as a kid growing up, that whole time with Pertwee, units there.
Yeah.
Probably missed them. If that was your favorite part of the show, well, now you've just changed it so much that those guys are out, So I think that they should have used him more. And I really hate that they didn't get him back in time before he passed away for Modern Who.
Yeah. Well, they did bring Unit back, thankfully, in Modern Who with the Brigadier's daughter, Kate Stewart, for a time. Right. So that was good. And we also had Torchwood, which is essentially like a modern version of Unit, a little bit. So
they got the saluting Cyberman.
Yes. The sort of posthumous appearance by Nicholas Courtney. Yeah. As a Cyberman.
Terrible.
Okay. Well, Moffat, All right. So that original script also featured Harry Sullivan, and Miss Jackson was supposed to be a guy, just a generic guy, didn't even have a character name. But then director Lenny Mayne built up the part, changed the gender, and surprise, like I said, cast his wife in the role. So I'm sure his wife was appreciative of that, needless to say. Probably scored some husband points, I guess. Eldrad's home was originally identified as the black hole Omega 4.6, but when script editor Robert Holmes pointed out to Baker and Martin that the name Omega had already appeared in The Three Doctors, and which, by the way, was also written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin. So they decided, okay, I guess we'll change the name to Castria instead of Omega. So apparently they really like the name Omega.
But couldn't revisit the Brigadier.
Yeah. In the final scene, if you're wondering what Sarah's whistling, she whistles the tune, Daddy Wouldn't Buy Me a Bow Wow, which I'm not familiar with, but because apparently Elisabeth Sladen was not able to whistle, the director, Lenny Mayne, provided the whistling while Elisabeth Sladen mimed to it. So she pretended to whistle.
You got to do what you got to do, right? A stunt whistler.
Yeah. I wonder what that pays. Well, yeah. But being the director, he probably didn't get anything extra for that, I'm guessing.
Every future job interview would have quite a few questions.
Yes.
So it says here you're a stunt whistler.
Yes. Yes, I whistled in the final scene, Elisabeth Sladen's final scene in Doctor Who. So how's that for an acting cred under your resume? All right. So we're going to do 3 topics today. Should be pretty simple, this story. So we probably will breeze right through it. Topic number 1, let's talk Eldrad Must Live. And in this topic, then I want to talk the 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane. Obviously, we need to talk about these two right off the bat because this is Sarah Jane's final story and her big farewell scene with the Doctor. And she gets a lot to do, Elisabeth Sladen, in this episode. She gets possessed by Eldrad. She recovers, and then she gets her big farewell scene. So, and then Elisabeth Sladen gets to do a lot of comedic stuff along the way, and just her reactions to certain things going on. In particular, the scene where she's either pouting or sulking, looking at, rolling her eyes. I love watching her. I think she's just this kind of just brightness that fills the screen when she's on.
I was thinking that exact same thing because I actually looked her up to see how old was she because she's so.
I think she was in her 20s at the time.
She was 30. She was born in 1946, and this was filmed in 76.
Yeah, so that'd be 30, yeah. Or close to it. Yeah.
Her birthday, I think, is in February, so depending on when they filmed it.
Yeah.
They were grinding these out because they made, 50 a year?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they did a lot back then, yeah.
Yeah, so, but you know what? When you go back and watch Pertwee with her, she was a reporter, so she's clearly well established. She's like a professional.
Yeah.
And I think she gets into that companion role, and just obviously the doctor's the boss in that situation. And I don't mean that. That's probably not the right. The more parent. I know what's going on.
Yeah.
So she trusts him, and she just goes headlong into her adventures. But yeah, I think she learns to relax in her role as he's got my back. And she seems way more bubbly and happy toward the end there.
Yeah.
Than she did in the beginning. She was worked up and stressed out most of the time in the early ones.
Yeah, when she was with John Pertwee's doctor. You're right. You know, she was the hard-nosed reporter, essentially the Lois Lane of Doctor Who, is the way I look at her. And then, you know, when Tom Baker... Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Lois Lane before she knew Superman had her back.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, so a little bit more skeptical, cynical, perhaps. I know that she was, tried to be a strong feminist character back in the 70s. You know, what they used to call women's lib back then. That was the euphemism they used to throw around back in the 70s. So that's what they tried to introduce in that. And then, you know, when Tom Baker came along, Sarah, you know, she was still a reporter. She still did reporter things, but she was much more relaxed, and she was having more fun. She wasn't so as serious as she initially was, like you're talking about. And as a result, you know, it allowed that exuberance, that light that somehow within Elisabeth Sladen just to come out on screen. And for me, you know, watching this, you know, I found her so likable. And,
Indeed.
you know, she was the one you could really relate to, because she was enough of a cynic and skeptical that she didn't buy into everything, excuse me, that the doctor was selling and all his BS. So consequently, she would needle him from time to time, and you know, she felt comfortable enough doing that after a while, and she could hold her own. She wasn't always needing somebody to rescue her. She was pretty resourceful in a lot of ways.
Well, I think Pertwee and most of his companions were stiffer in comparison than Baker.
Yeah.
Than her.
Yeah.
Leela's a whole different book. Romana's a whole different book.
Yeah.
But
Romana is essentially a female doctor. So.
And I love her youth, but that wide open eye. I mean, what would you be like if you got to ride on the TARDIS? I'd be like she is, wide open and just let's eat this up, because this is a lifetime. You know, after she just bought into the whole thing that I'm going to survive this because the doctor's gotten me out of every scrape so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's bubbly and happy, and you know, she carries that over when she's in her 60s or whatever in the TV show. She's still got that. They play off as being her character, having residuals, but I think it's the actress. I think she's like that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I never got the chance to meet her, but I would have really enjoyed that if I had had that opportunity. I think she would have been amazing to talk to.
I didn't know she passed away until much later, and it hit me hard.
Yeah.
Because out of all of them, I feel like I don't know how to say this right. It felt like
you connected with her.
Yeah. You know, because, wow, you saw her young, you saw her old. I was young when I watched her young. I'm old while I'm watching her old.
You grew up with her. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was still doing it. You know what I mean? So that's also reassuring too. She wasn't just retired or sitting around. So
Yeah.
yeah, I liked her a lot.
And she still looked great, all these years later. So she,
Yeah,
so it, and she always just had that incredible smile. So I had, yeah, in this one, it does get a little sad, but, I think it's kind of offset when we see her leave because obviously and we know as modern fans that she comes back and we know that she's in other stories. So this isn't the last we see of her. Even the doctor says at one point, during their farewell scene, like, I'll see you again. Now, Sarah has no idea if he's just talking out of his mouth sideways, but it turns out he was right. He did see her again several
he did.
times.
Yeah, and oh, that's right. It was more than one.
Yeah, because she returns for the Five Doctors. She returned in the Modern Era and Journey's End and the Stolen Earth. So
Yeah.
and School Reunion. So that's she came back 3 times to Doctor Who.
Well, then on her show, Matt Smith visits her too. So
Yeah, and also David Tennant.
well, there you go.
Yeah, so she had 2 doctors on her show.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately we didn't get any more doctors, but sadly, at least we got a couple doctors.
Indeed.
And I thought she had a nice little relation, or as fun as it was to watch her with David Tennant, I really enjoyed watching her with Matt Smith as well.
Well, you remember the comment she makes in this episode when she's with the main guy there, the bad guy.
Eldrad?
Eldrad, yeah.
Yeah.
She's with Eldrad, and he regenerates.
Mm-hmm.
And she makes that comment, man, I liked her, but I don't like him.
Yeah.
Well, I think about that with the doctors. I don't think she got along with Eccleston. Or maybe not.
She never met Eccleston's doctor.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think she would have got along with him, and I don't think.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, that because of his abrasiveness sometimes. Yeah,
she was that part of it. She liked the fun part, and Peter Capaldi. I don't know if they got along too well.
Colin Baker. I don't know if she would have liked either. His sixth doctor.
She might have straightened him out, and she wouldn't have stood for the choking bit. I guarantee that.
No, she would have she would have like, that's it.
She'd have opened the door and let him out.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. She would have gone in there and got Perry out of there and, brought her to a more healthier environment, probably. Rescued her from the TARDIS.
And you know what else about her, too? There's a lot of companions that, I don't know. I guess it's just the role of the unfortunateness of how they use the background characters, and obviously the Doctor's in the front, and that's what I mean by background.
Yeah.
The support characters, they always got this kind of niche role they have to play. They have to be us, and sometimes the actors aren't quite up to making that continue to be interesting the whole time they're on there. Some of them are just a certain way, and they stay that certain way, and they don't grow and expand like she did. Even in modern Who, some of them don't grow. Martha, I have a lot of respect for her. She grew, and she grew out of it.
Yes.
So she's one of the few that has like a real arc that you can measure and see. But obviously, if you give somebody 30 years to do a character, they're going to have to figure out a way to do that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Hopefully, that we'll see some of those modern era companions maybe return in the future, and who knows? Maybe some of them will get their own Sarah Jane like spinoff. As an older character,
they need to get
like Amy Pond, perhaps.
That'd be great. I'd love to see Susan come back before that actor passes away. Actress.
Yeah, and I know Peter Capaldi wanted to have Susan appear on the show.
He had a picture of her on his desk. That's as close as they got.
That's as close as they got, unfortunately. All right, so what did you make of, since we're talking about Sarah, what did you make of, her scenes while she was under Eldrad's hypnosis?
At first, you're like, my goodness, how do you do brain dead zombie again? You see that in so many things, but
right.
She did it real well. I thought she gets a little playful with it. At one time, she gets this little weird look in her eye.
Yes.
Eldrad, and you're like, oh my god, she's
like almost
enjoying.
like a deranged kind of look, a little bit.
And you got to imagine that day on the set, they probably made that 10 takes of that, and they've been doing it for a week, and the fact that she's still having fun with it is great. And how else would you keep doing it? But I liked it, and her not remembering it later, and her explanation of how I saw a hand, someone reached out for me. It's perfectly plausible. She comes off as believable. You don't always get that. Some people are like, she seemed like a different person.
Yeah, and I was just going to bring that up because, and I think it was a credit even at a younger age, her range, because she was able to portray this possessed person. Then when you can see the difference between that possessed character and then when she's snaps back to normal, and you could see the difference between Elisabeth Sladen's performances between the two. It was very distinctive, and so like you said, it felt more credible when she does return because it didn't. You know what Sarah's supposed to be like, and it was obvious when she was under Eldrad's control.
Yeah, and you know what? The whole who else could have pulled that off?
Yeah.
I don't know that Eldrad could have possessed the Doctor. Mm-hmm. Nobody else was around. So Eldrad, we also have to remember, modeled herself after Sarah, supposedly, because that's the first human she saw.
Right.
Yeah. Impactful. And convincing that when she came out of being under the mind control, the director of the nuclear power plant didn't have all that hard time believing it.
Yeah.
So that showed range a little bit. And, I mean, it didn't take a whole lot of convincing a few minutes later when he sees a disembodied hand crawling across the floor.
It's like, okay, well, maybe if I see this hand, it's okay, I guess I can buy your story that you're possessed. Yes.
Exactly. But, I mean, like anybody else, he starts out with diminished responsibility. You broke into a nuclear power plant. We'd still have to lock you up.
Yeah.
But then he's like, okay, I'm starting to buy it.
Yeah. So let's
pull it off.
So let's switch over to Tom Baker a little bit. So the Fourth Doctor, his relationship with Sarah, obviously, this is what draws to a close. But there's a moment early on in the story where they just arrived on Earth, and it just so happens they arrived in a quarry, which I thought was hilarious because it makes fun of the fact that they always film in quarries, right?
Yeah.
So they actually finally landed in an actual quarry intentionally.
I thought that was great.
Yeah. So that was a very clever way to acknowledge that they're filming in yet another quarry.
Indeed. And this one was active for the first time.
Yeah.
They didn't have to hide all the big trucks and bulldozers.
No, and the fact that it becomes quickly dangerous because the alarms start going off, and you find out, they're blasting today.
Yes.
And as a result, it causes a chunk of the rock face to come down on them, and Sarah gets buried. And I thought it was a pretty good scene where Tom Baker is frantic to recover Sarah.
Indeed. Well, he shows great deal of affection for her. Not just, I'm responsible for you, but affection. That whole trade, and I don't want to step on it if it's your quote, but
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
that exchange later on in the show where he's going back into the nuclear power plant
Yeah.
and she runs after him,
Yeah.
and they're like, I worry about you. Well, I worry about you too. That whole deal.
Yeah, I thought that was a great scene. That was
His whole character plays light about relationships,
mm-hmm.
but that's him showing a vulnerability. I care about you.
And we normally didn't see that with his doctor. He wasn't very emotional, his doctor, about that kind of things.
I think it was pretty clear that Romana, he had an affection for her because she definitely had an affection for him, let alone that the two actors married. But he felt a paternal sort of, I'm looking out for you and I'm training you the right way to do it. And she had this, oh man, I never knew being a Time Lord could be like this. But even that wasn't openly emotional like he was with Sarah Jane.
No, I mean, he kind of had that with Leela too, where, he was trying to educate her in a very My Fair Lady kind of way about the universe and technology and all that.
Don't you think the Doctor has a deeper relationship with the companions when they write it correctly anyway?
Yes.
With the companions who see him regenerate?
Generally, because it creates this kind of bond. Because there's only been very few companions that have actually watched the Doctor regenerate.
They're the two on the planet X or what it is with Hartnell.
The 10th planet, yeah.
But because of the lost tapes and stuff, I don't personally know how all of that turned out. They took the characters away and erased their minds after number 2.
Patrick Troughton, yeah. Right.
Fountain. And then he, with Pertwee, it's her.
And Brigadier, yeah.
And Rose, clearly that really cemented her relationship with 9 and 10. So, and I think it mattered a little bit to the Doctor in the movie. It wasn't quite the same, but she thought she lost a patient. And,
Grace, yeah. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, well, here's the patient, but is it? But yeah, you know what I'm saying? I think it means a lot when they see that because it instantly goes, wow, it's not just another guy that knows a lot. This guy is truly an alien.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like when Clara watched the 11th Doctor regenerate into the 12th, that, she had a hard time processing that. Kind of like when Rose initially had a hard time processing the 10th Doctor.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. So did her family, Mickey and
that was and Jackie, yeah.
Yeah.
But so their final scene, where Sarah's trying to talk to the Doctor and talk to him about how frustrated she is. She just wants to feel like a normal person again. She wants to get a bath, and just relax and feel normal for a little while. But he's completely tuning her out. He's messing with the console underneath it, and he keeps asking her for tools, so she gets angry that he's not listening to her. So she's like, okay, that's it. I'm out of here. So she goes off to pack her things. And when, while she's off doing that, he gets this summons from the Time Lords, which sets up the next story, The Deadly Assassin. And where, the Fourth Doctor encounters the Master.
Right.
And so when Sarah comes back, Sarah is like, okay, I'm ready to go. And the Doctor, who hadn't listened to anything she said, is like, how did you know? And that leads to, her saying, okay, drop me off. And he's like, okay, I have to drop you off because the Time Lords need me. And then she goes, so you're going to Gallifrey? And she kind of hints that, well, I always kind of wanted to see Gallifrey. I never got to see Gallifrey. But he tells her, no, you can't come for whatever weird reason. So,
A lot of the companions want to see Gallifrey.
oh yeah, they want to know what's going on. They want to know why the Doctor hates the Time Lord so much, probably. But essentially, the Doctor uses this as an excuse to like drop her off and say
Right.
goodbye to her. So, what did you make of the way they handled that scene where she leaves?
Well, she clearly was trying to get an effect out of him,
Mm-hmm.
and she wasn't serious. And I have to think there's a swimming pool, but no bathtubs.
Yes, there's probably a bathtub, I would think.
But you know what? Maybe not.
Maybe the Doctor deleted it for whatever reason.
Who knows? Well, yeah, the rooms get deleted.
Jettisoned, yeah.
And the TARDIS redesigns itself, I think. But I know there's a fountain in the cloister room. But so my wife loves a bath.
Right.
You can save a bad week or a bad day or a bad whatever if she can have that. I'm not my experience, but I can respect that because I've seen how much it affects her. So yeah,
I think some women in general like that. They use that to decompress and relax. Like I can shut the door and I can have some time to myself.
So yeah, just to feel something familiar too, because she'd been traveling for quite a while, and just in the time that we know about is what 3-4 years. So
yeah.
So
we don't know exactly how long she was actually traveling with the Doctor.
Right. She still looks approximately the same age, so we have to assume it's a reasonable amount of time. But
right.
Not being home, no matter how good a trip is, not being home and around your stuff and around your people, you start to miss it. Your own personal bathroom, your own, your neighbors, your dog, your whatever it is that you're attached to. You miss that stuff, even if you're in Paris, for the World's Fair
right.
or something. Like
well,
that.
Sarah even mentions, like, hey, I'll give Harry and the Brigadier your best. So
I think she's trying to encourage him to. Well, why don't you come with me and see them as well?
Right.
I think, but it's too little, too late. He's actually got to go.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Sarah. I got this Gallifrey thing. I'm swamped. Got to go. Bye.
And he can multitask a whole bunch. We've seen that in a lot of his characters. Matt Smith does it probably the best. The whole doing one thing while you're thinking about another. So his distractedness is very, very plain. And she's feeling ignored was what it is. And it plays into it. But it's not unusual for him. It's not unusual for any of the Doctors, really. I don't know any of them. Even Hartnell would just be looking off into space every once in a while and be like, "Are you with us still?" But
they're all kind of on Planet Doctor, essentially.
Yeah, because he's at that point 900 years old. Of course, there's a lot on his mind.
Well, there's a classic Tom Baker line that I love, where it's actually involves Sarah Jane. And he goes, I'm a Time Lord. I walk in eternity. So that he kind of sees him, and she kind of mocks him. She has her like this hair bonnet that she pulls around her face, tries to act like, oh, poor Doctor, but how troublesome. But he's like, I'm not a human being. I'm a Time Lord. I walk in eternity, so I'm not like you. So he kind of sets himself of this, like, I am a big cosmic being. So I'm thinking about things you couldn't even begin to understand.
Christopher Eccleston does the same thing with Rose.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel the world spinning under my feet, and it's around the sun through the Milky Way.
That whole speech. Yeah, I can feel it. Yes.
Every second of it.
Yeah.
And maybe he does. And You ever drive somewhere and when you're done driving, you're like, huh, my mind drifted.
Yeah.
What all were you doing? You were listening to the radio, you were driving, maybe you were holding a conversation with someone else in the car. He's got that times 1,000.
Yeah.
That TARDIS, first of all, is supposed to be driven by 6 Time Lords.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing the job of 6 people.
Right. Or
By the way,
is he?
Yeah, true. And the classic control room.
Yeah.
We've got to mention that. But
yeah. What did you make of the what I like to call the shaving kit control room? With the shaving mirror.
I really liked it because it was nostalgic. Because I was like, oh yeah, I remember that, and
right.
I remember where they found it, and I know why they found it because the other one was falling apart.
Yeah,
and
it's a secondary control room. Yeah.
The main control room was dilapidated by then.
Right.
The set.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed a reason to at least get away from it for a while, and so when it looked a little different, you wouldn't be like, oh. But I thought it was neat, and it builds for the future in Modern Who, where they changed the home screen.
Yeah, the desktop theme.
Desktop theme every time there's a new Doctor. So
right.
Yeah, and the TARDIS was old when the Doctor took her.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, there's all kinds of new things. And I thought that was cool. And if nothing else, they need a reason to have a newer monitor on the wall, scanner on the wall.
Yes.
Every once in a while, because those old cathode ray tube televisions that they had in the early ones just wouldn't keep going.
Yeah, because I mean, there essentially was in the original ones. Yeah, the black and white eras. It was like a TV set mounted to the top of the ceiling of the.
Could you, as a 2021 human being,
yeah,
get taken into that first TARDIS and he says, "Well, let's check the scanner," and this 7,000-pound 12 TV screen comes down from the ceiling, and you'd be like, "This is not a future spaceship. This is not a time ship. This is crap." But yeah, so yeah, I liked it in that sense. But I also like.
Well, if it was designed to be intentionally retro,
exactly,
you could pull it off.
But I also see why why in universe it wouldn't be his favorite, because those little doors you have to keep flipping down to reach the controls, that would just get old.
Yeah.
Plus, as often as he's working on the TARDIS, getting inside the control booth is so much smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting in there it's just a pain.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt Smith went the whole point. He's swinging around from a swing set under his. So
yeah.
So yeah.
But he looked really cool in those goggles.
Right. So it's a bit of a magician's trick. Hey, check this out. It's something new to distract you from the what's happening in the real world. But I like that. I liked it. It's nostalgic. I like my home growing up when I discovered this show back in the day, which probably would have been about 1976, had dark wood paneling, and it reminded me of that room. So
right. Yeah. The 70s. Having lived through the 70s, I know that 70s were all about the wood paneling.
If it had blue and gold shag carpeting, it would have been my living.
Confessions of an Old Living Room. Yes. All right. So anything else about the Doctor and Sarah before we move on?
I do. Like I said, I think they're a great pair. I think all the time you see tropes in other shows of, it's Doctor Who, and it'll always be the guy in the long scarf.
Yes. They even use that long scarf to take out Eldrad in this one.
And when I think of him, I usually think of her. So great, iconic pair.
Yes, I agree. All right, topic number 2. Let's talk Eldrad on Earth. So this will be the female version of Eldrad, the one that we find out is based her physiognomy on Sarah Jane Smith, because she was the first human that Eldrad had contact with, or a living being that Eldrad had had contact with in only 150 million years. No big deal, right?
Right.
So, but like I said, played by Judith Paris, who I thought the costume designer did a really good job, given the time period, and just made the character look very striking. Kind of like almost like in a '60s Star Trek kind of way.
I don't know anything about tailoring or sewing or any of that. What she appears to be wearing is like a leotard.
Yeah.
Which has jewels on it. And they don't seem to sag or pull or anything like that, which you would think on especially the modern television set, you'd be able to see where that's falling apart. So you're right. They did a fine job of putting that together.
They don't clink around, like when she moves.
And it doesn't cause a lot of lens flare or any of that you might expect. I
thought it was a great costume design. I mean, I could see like people at Doctor Who conventions cosplaying this.
I thought she might have been cold. I also noticed one time, I think she was barefoot most of the time. So that might have been a problem.
Maybe.
Beyond that, I also have to ask.
Yeah.
If you're regenerated from just the flesh of your hand.
Yeah.
Would clothes be a part of it, or is that just her?
I have to think that it's her. So essentially she's walking around naked, right?
Right. So, and she's not human, so,
it doesn't the standards don't apply. Yeah.
Exactly. So that might just be her.
Yeah.
And if you didn't see, like I said, if you just seen pieces popping off or anything, that wouldn't have happened. So I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. And the makeup and the outfit seemed to be of a same enough color that it could just be her flesh.
Yeah.
So just her stone, maybe. I don't know. Did you say flesh when you're made of stone?
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably you'd say her silicate, perhaps. I don't know. Yeah, but I thought it was a visually interesting character.
Yeah, I like.
And so this Eldrad, who regenerated from Sarah's appearance, based on anyway, essentially starts. She makes this deal with the doctor to take her back to Castria, and she wants to go back, and she's very insistent because she wants to go back to 150 million years ago when she, was first, I guess, but she says she was like exiled or something. Obviously, there's more to the story as we find out. But the doctor says, no, okay, I'll counter that deal. Like, I'll take you to Castria, but we're not going to go back 150 million years. We're going to go back to Castria today. Because I'm not going to upset the web of time or whatever for you.
Yeah, you're going to need Matt Smith for that.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, that doesn't come late until Stephen Moffat shows up. So you have to wait for that.
Indeed.
To play with all that, time can be rewritten nonsense. All that, yeah. So she finally agrees, and they end up going, they travel to Castria, which turns out to be like this really desolate place. And she figures out how to go into these underground thermal caves. She wants to look for survivors, but this whole thing is booby-trapped, as it turns out. And then she gets this syringe in her chest. So it kind of reminded me, because she was radioactive, it almost kind of reminded me, I don't know if you ever saw the movie The World Is Not Enough, where the bad guy gets impaled by one of those rods, the nuclear, that you use the carbon rods or whatever. I forget what the kind of rods they were.
I was thinking of Coulson in the Avengers.
That too. That works. He gets impaled.
Stick. Oh my God, that looks painful.
Yeah.
But and then Loki gets it back in his show.
So what did you make of the female Eldrad? And then we can also talk about Dr. Carter, Professor Watson, if you want, as well.
Well, I got to say, I know she probably got the job through nepotism, but she had one ability that I remarked on. I was like, wow. When she was playing paralyzed,
Yeah.
the doctor picks her up.
Well, that wasn't the director's wife. That was the one was the one that was the director's wife was Professor Watson's assistant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But the doctor picks her up.
Yeah.
He's carrying her. She's planking
Yeah.
all around. And it's still her. It's not, I looked hard.
Yeah.
Is that a man? It is not. She's holding her body that stiff.
Yeah, and he just picks her up. So Tom Baker must be pretty strong, at least he was back then, to just pick her up. I mean, because she's tall, too, so she's got to have some mass.
Because you can see her hands move.
Right.
Maybe they used some kind of special effect like a wire or something.
I couldn't tell, honestly. It looked like he picked her up.
If I had to guess, she was a dancer.
Yeah,
she has
that makes sense. That makes sense. She did kind of move like she did have a bit of grace to her when she walked around, especially in that leotard. So she probably, I think maybe she was a dancer, perhaps.
But she's also inflexible because she's a rock. Mm-hmm. And it's cooled off enough. So I hadn't even thought about it until right now. That's a good solid part of that pun. Yeah. That's a good part of that character that, wow, you really are acting like a rock. A rock would be, yeah. I don't know how in the heck they moved. I guess her planet is naturally cold, but then she fixed it or whatever. At least
she probably doesn't feel the cold. I'm guessing, being silicate, right?
True, but man, I don't know. I kept waiting on what do you call those little things in Star Trek? The Horta.
The little rock monsters. Yeah.
Yeah, the melted pizza on a rock.
Yeah, the Horta. Yes, exactly.
I kept expecting one of those to come in and dig some tunnels for us, but yeah, I think she pulled off her bit pretty well, and I like the comparison between her regeneration and the doctor's. Mm-hmm. And there's a line, and I was really hoping there would have been a little more to dig at here, but there's a line about, why is she a she now? Or why is she a he now? And, you should know better than anyone, doctor, about the laws of regeneration. They're already hinting that you could come either one.
Right.
So somebody who says it's not right that Jodie Whittaker is the doctor can go all the way back to Tom Baker.
Exactly.
Did not disagree with it.
Exactly. Well,
I'm sure.
Yeah. So, any thoughts about Dr. Carter, Professor Watson? You want to share?
There's so many people in there that I'm confusing half of them.
Dr. Carter was the guy who initially found that that sample was growing. It was similar to DNA, and then he ends up getting possessed and tries to kill the doctor. Then he ends up falling off that high scaffold.
I thought he was fine. I thought it was interesting that his possession wasn't total because he was still acting like himself and hearing the voice.
Yeah.
And was acting. So apparently either Eldrad could still tap into their subconscious or their subconscious was allowed to have a little more control, whichever way, which also explains why Sarah Jane kind of got giggly with that one little bit. Eldrad must live line. But, I thought he was convincing. The first time I heard that voice in his head, I wasn't sure if that was coming out of a speaker or was coming from Sarah Jane through the speaker, or that it was him. So I only picked up on it like the third time I watched it that, that's in his head. So, I thought he was a nice guy. They didn't dig too deep on him, but he not his world, crystals, but he was the one that was like, ooh, it's absorbing radiation, and the doctor's like, yeah, that might not be a good thing. So he had some contributions to the show. He wasn't just like,
he was the one that kind of introduced the idea that the crystal was regenerating.
indeed.
Yeah. So Professor Watson, meanwhile, so this is the guy that was in charge of the nuclear facility,
Right.
the Newton complex. And initially, he's very hostile because he thinks Sarah Jane is a terrorist who, like they've had protesters, presumably being a nuclear power plant, and probably thinks, well, she's just some nut that has got herself inside one of the reactors or whatever and locked herself in as a protest. So he views her as a terrorist, not knowing that she's possessed by this alien force.
Well, in 1976, and I'm imagining in 2021, if you somehow are not discovered until you're inside a nuclear facility,
right,
that's what they're going to assume.
Yes.
And they're probably going to shoot you.
Yes.
By the way, the defenses of that place drove me crazy.
Right?
You give a rifle.
Where's the security in that place?
And then he walks up to within grabbing distance with the rifle that he slung over his arm.
Mm-hmm.
He's not even able to do his job when he does try. So of course he does. So yeah, he's I don't know. He's got. I want to assume that his world is the science and the safety of that plant in the don't let it explode sense.
Yeah.
There's probably some guy that shows up at the monthly meeting that's in charge of security, and he gets about 2 minutes to speak. Everything going all right with security? Great. And he doesn't worry about that.
Yeah.
He's all of a sudden thrown into this. He got through all of that. Now what are we going to do about this terrorist lady? So yeah, he's off his guard, and he's so far off his guard that when you suggest that she's possessed, that he doesn't. Well, at first he's like, "No way, that's not." She's still got to pay for that. And even before he sees the disembodied hand crawling across the floor, he's starting to be open to it, and because he doesn't know he don't know anything. His whole world's changed.
Yeah,
I don't know how long his career's been at that nuclear reactor, but this is the worst day and the most different day that he's ever had. Even the scenarios where they train for disaster, it doesn't involve Crystal Lady being born in the radiator room.
Go figure, right?
Walking into the reaction room,
right?
So yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong though.
Yeah.
I believe they did the filming on an actual nuclear. But aren't reactors? Doesn't that actually happen in the water?
Generally, yeah, because that's where the power comes from. Is when those uranium is heats up that water, presumably.
Right. Exactly.
So
and that's how they cool it off. When they talk about meltdown, is because the water vaped off,
right?
And now you're melting the stuff. So that was the one little tidbit I saw that I didn't like about that. But he's in chaos, but he stays in charge.
Right.
He looks for his people. He tells the lady, I didn't catch her name, to get out. You have to go. Yeah. He calls his family, and in typical British fashion.
I thought that was a great scene, by the way, because he, it's one of those, like, I think I'm going to die here, so I'm going to call my family. And he kind of like, he's talking to his kid, but he's like, okay, yeah, that's nice, but let me talk to mom and let me talk to mummy. And you can kind of feel that he wants to say more, but because he's an uptight British bureaucrat, he's not going to his kid. And so he tries to talk to his wife, but he's not honest with her either. He just says, look, there's something going on here at the plant. I'm going to have to stay for a while. Everything's going to be okay. But he knows in his head that I'm probably not going to make it out of here alive.
Well, he's not going to get to hang up the phone if he tells her the truth.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he can't be honest with her.
He gives one little emotional thing, kind of, kiss the kids for me.
Right.
And then he goes, yeah, which I'm assuming is, she's like, what? Yeah.
He never does this.
So it's out of character a little bit.
He usually comes home and beats the kids. What are you talking about? What is this?
He's a man and she's a woman. She
Right.
raises the kids.
Right.
76.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
You know, the point that his second in command, and I assumed that she was a physicist as well or whatever, because she was running. She's a woman.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
It's pretty progressive for a 76. Yeah, exactly.
I couldn't help but notice the whole Galaxy Quest.
Okay.
Did you? When he says, "Look, we need to send a group of men in here." I got the whole thing written down, but we really got to get somebody in a radiation suit to go run in down there. Send some guys down. She turns to the guy right on the other side of her and goes, "Hey, get some men and get them in radiation."
Yeah.
I was like, my Lord.
Yes.
That is some Galaxy Quest.
Right. You can almost see Sigourney Weaver in that role.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Anything else about these characters?
No, I think they were what they were, and there's not a lot to dig at there.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Topic number 3. Let's talk Eldrad on Castria, their final topic. So this is where, like I said, we've gotten to Castria. Eldrad gets impaled, and turns out, oh, by the way, Eldrad is the one who came up with this acid that's inside that giant syringe that is sticking out of her chest. So the Doctor and Sarah try to rush her to this regeneration chamber to try to heal her, and in the process, they think that the regeneration device, which presumably has also been booby-trapped, has killed her because it comes down. It's almost like this big stone block that comes down and presumably smushes her, pulverizes her, I should say. And you see this little outline, but no Eldrad. And then all of a sudden, a male Eldrad comes out from a completely different room, says, "Hey, here I am. I'm male now. I'm a dude now." Like, "Hey, thanks for regenerating me into my true form." And this is where we find out that Eldrad's real goal is he wants to rule Castria. But it turns out, guess what? Nobody's there. The entire race bank where Eldrad was intending to revive his dormant people is completely empty. And turns out they're all dead. So he is essentially the ruler of a dead planet. And to make matters worse, his arch enemy, this King Rokon, shows up in a video and essentially trolls him about it, taunts him about it, saying, "You are okay. I salute you as the king of nothing." So
my goodness.
that doesn't go over well too with Eldrad. So what did you make of Eldrad coming back to Castria, getting his male body, and getting totally played by and totally owned by his archenemy, Rokon?
So he is the Zod of this universe, I guess. He's the bad guy, survivor of the planet.
Who was exiled.
Yeah, they're taking him out to obliterate him.
Yeah.
And he had, 1 in 3,000 or 3 million or some giant number of chances of not being totally obliterated.
Yeah.
They rush the guy in the beginning, and it pays off. But they're so worried about him existing that not only do they all kill themselves, they wipe out their race bank.
Yeah.
Just hide them on another side of the galaxy where somebody might find them. They clearly have space travel and could have maybe done that.
Well, maybe they really did, and they just told him they were dead.
what says you're a real bad guy
Yeah.
more than, okay, not only do we have to kill ourselves, we have to make sure there's none of us ever again
Yes.
for him to. So, yeah, he's a bad guy, and he pulls it off. And Sarah Jane doesn't like him. I'm sorry, my dog is having a fit over here.
I can hear. Yeah. Is he okay?
Yeah, she was having trouble
she?
getting out. She's getting old.
I understand.
She's watching this film though.
Oh, hi. Hello.
Say hi, Callie Lou.
Special cameo appearance by
Callie Lou.
Callie Lou.
Callie Lou. Yeah, and by the way, I love that your cat's named Keiko.
Yeah,
thank
you.
Great Star Trek reference.
Yep.
That's
who she was named after, Keiko O'Brien. Yeah.
Does she only come out once every week or so, and then Vincent's always angry with you, like Keiko? And you make her do dog things even though she's a trained cat. So, yeah, I thought that was a good payoff. You don't get a lot of time to know him.
Right.
All he does is monologue.
He does, and he just shouts like everybody pay attention to me. I'm speaking in a very loud voice. So, I need to be the center of attention.
And what a bulky outfit he had. But
yeah. She can move just fine, but apparently he's like the hunchback of Notre Dame over here.
Not Vogons doesn't sound right. That's Hitchhiker's Guide.
Suntarans. That's probably what you're thinking.
No, I'm thinking of those red shape-shifty things that look like pizzas. Oh my goodness, they're in Doctor Who. They're shapeshifters. They have to kidnap. Oh goodness, they're in the one with the Loch Ness monster, and they're also
the Zygons.
Zygon. There you
go. Yeah, I see it.
Bulky like that, no neck, big old thing. Mm-hmm. It made me think of them, but quite the opposite because those guys look soft and these guys look rough. So I got to imagine that's a really tough planet to live on, and to visit, not so much.
Well, and it's not very strategic of a body form because to turn your head, you have to turn your entire body.
Well, maybe they move through rock, and that's a defense.
Maybe
you don't want to become separate.
I don't know, but so yeah, this. Assuming this male form essentially reveals who Eldrad really is. I mean, we kind of knew because Eldrad was trying to have people kill the Doctor and was perfectly willing to kill all the innocents on Earth by causing all this nuclear chaos. So, in order to regenerate. So, you kind of had suspicions, and I'm kind of surprised that the Doctor and Sarah were going along with all this. And to the point where Sarah, once Eldrad gets revealed, Sarah is all like, he played us. And I'm thinking, watching this going, yeah, haven't you been paying attention? Of course he played you.
Well, the Doctor is like a chess master versus my level of skill. I can play you in chess, and I can sometimes pull a move here and there, but the Doctor's 10 moves ahead. So he lets it happen.
Right.
You got to remember,
lets it play out. Yeah.
Doctor's that guy who lets himself get captured because they're either going to take you to the leader, and you're going to find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a shortcut to the end. So he knows he's got to keep Sarah Jane from messing it up as he's going along. And I like the whole bit when they get into the temporal grace thing. You can't use words here. But they also brought up that trope about where is Gallifrey? It must be in Ireland. So there's a couple of great ones. But the whole play in the Doctor knew where he was going because he kept letting him. He just kept feeding him rope, giving him more rope to hang himself.
Yes.
Herself. depending on how you see it. But
their self. Let's treat him as binary. So he's gender fluid.
Or gender static, rock, like
Yeah. Yes.
how do I want to say this? The female had to be convinced several times. Convinced is not the right word. Coerced, even to cooperate.
Right.
So I'm going to cooperate because I have to. I have no other choice. So when he gets home, and now he's back in his male body, I assume that's the form he had before, or similar.
His typical form, probably.
Hair explodes, and clearly with the way he monologues, it is. Yeah. So they pulled that off pretty well. It seems subtle, but when you go digging at it, it's like, wow, yeah. It's a megalomaniac is what he is.
Well, and, it makes sense when Sarah makes that comment you mentioned that she liked the female version better because at least you could talk to the female version. But this male version just wants to shout and rule everything. So there's no like conversation to be had there whatsoever.
Indeed. Well, and he's also, I can't enslave my people, so I'll enslave yours.
Yeah.
So he's willing to just be a butthole right to the end.
Pretty much. Yeah. All right. And what did you make of that final message from Rokon where he just says, okay, we're totally stuck it to you, like, hey, you want to be ruler? Well, guess what? You're ruling a dead planet. Enjoy.
That's perfect because a megalomaniac cannot be a megalomaniac if there's no audience.
Right.
So it really does stab him. Congratulations. You got what you want. You're the mightiest one of your kind. You're the last of your kind. But such drastic. What did he say? Cut your throat despite your.
Yeah.
It's terrible. I can't conceive of it. We wouldn't do anything even remotely in the same ballpark as that if we knew Hitler was coming back next year.
Right.
Some people seem like they would welcome him, but
unfortunately, yes.
You get where I'm going. The worst guy you can think of, Genghis Khan, Hitler,
right.
Noonien Singh, whoever you want. They to try to obliterate them and then kill everybody else just so there's no chance of him ruling you again. Goodness gracious!
Right. That seems like a little harsh, really. They're like, okay, we're going to completely commit genocide, self-genocide, suicide genocide, almost. That in order to keep you from ruling our planet. It seems a little harsh, but
yeah,
we're gonna take ourselves out of existence because we don't want you ruling us.
Indeed, and dedicated their whole planet to that same cause. No dissenters.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know who that king might have been an absolute ruler. So
right, and you do have to respect though that Rokon essentially made a trash talking YouTube video that got the payoff 150 million years later for that.
And you know what? I also have to say, wow, the tech on that planet, it is serviceable and ready to use 150 million years ago. And the only problem with the whole planet that shows its age is the dead dust on the floor of the other ones that I love Sarah Jane's reaction to when she realized she's just walking in the dead ones. But yeah.
Ew. Yeah.
Not one wire came loose.
No.
Not one circuit.
No.
The lights are still on.
Was it Eldrad picks his ring, he plugs it into that console, and all you had to do is just cover it in dust. Everything's working perfectly. So I have to say, Castrian engineering, top notch.
Yes, they can build a great car.
They built it to last. Definitely.
Longer than they do.
Maybe that's their slogan. Exactly. That should have been their advertising slogan. It's like, we build things to last even longer than we do.
Considering how hard the Doctor has to work to keep the TARDIS running,
Right. He could use probably some of those components.
that's the ultimate in
1 moment.
technology. Siri's,
Okay, I found it.
Siri's trying to talk to me. I don't know what I said that set her off. But anyway, yeah, it's amazing their technology. And considering how we think of the Doctor's technology and the differences there.
Yeah. All right. Anything else about the story we haven't talked about?
I do have to mention this. It's in my notes.
Okay.
Love the trope. And you see it all the time, especially in classic, and very pointedly in Shada.
Mm-hmm.
The spinning
Shut
clock.
up.
Indeed. The spinning clock to show time passing.
Yeah.
This one showed a spinning galaxy and then spinning planets around a star.
Right.
I was like, that is subtle. I didn't even pick up on it the second time I watched it. It was the third time I was like, oh, again, I love that. That, I don't know. It's the little details, I guess.
That's great.
I loved it.
That's great. All right. If there's nothing else, do you have any favorite quotes? You mentioned a couple, so I thought you might have some favorite quotes you want to share.
I have a few.
Okay, go for it.
The conversation between the Doctor and Sarah Jane. Sarah Jane says, "I worry about you. Look, anyway, who found that thing?" Doctor says, "Well, you did." Sarah Jane says, "Right. So I'm involved. It could have been me, not Driscoll. And besides, I'm from Earth, and you're not." Doctor says, "That's true." She says, "Exactly." And he says, "Yes, but..." Sarah Jane's, "Oh, but what?" Doctor says, "I worry about you. So be careful. We'll both be careful." Fine. That was a great exchange.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I love the way it was shot because they were shooting it with a rolling camera as Tom Baker's walking and Sarah Jane is, Elisabeth Sladen's trying to kind of like keep up with him. And, he's just walking forward very determinedly. And she's just kind of bouncing around like, hey, I'm going to be here with you even though you told me not to. But it was a great way to show how much they do care for one another. I really liked it.
One quote from the Doctor that brings back my love of the 60s Batman show.
Excellent.
And the James was, well, the gravity of the law finally caught up with him.
Nice.
That was great. He fell down the hole.
Yeah, you could very much hear Adam West delivering that line.
Indeed.
In deadpan.
And the Doctor.
Deadpan.
Indeed. Straight up. The Doctor says, "Oh, just punch up 7438000W8I 12127272911E8EX4 1113091115 and then see what happens." I'm like, wow. That's just so doctory.
That's cool.
But it would be like trying to. I can't remember the 3-digit code to my locker, But he's.
Well, he is. That's the Doctor. That's why he's. That's why who he is and who we are, I guess.
Indeed.
All right. I've got a few quotes myself. So one of those you kind of hinted on earlier, where this physician is talking with the Doctor early on, and he goes, "You're a doctor yourself?" The Doctor replies, "Well, sort of, yes." Physician says, "How do you do? Tell me, where did you qualify, if I may ask?" The Doctor replies, "A place called Gallifrey." The physician mulls this over. "Gallifrey? I've not heard of it. Perhaps it's in Ireland." And the Doctor replies, "Probably."
Probably.
And that, that's where we get this joke that Gallifrey is in Ireland. This long-running in-joke. I think it might be the first one.
Wow.
I think it might be the first reference to that.
It's the earliest one I've seen.
Yeah, it obviously does come up a couple times recently in the Jodie Whittaker era. In the Timeless Children, it was referenced. Let's see what else. Sarah and the Doctor going, Sarah says, "Are we dead?" The doctor replies, "No." Sarah says, "Are you sure?" The doctor replies, "Yes." Yes.
Good one.
I like that. And let's see. King Rokan, of course, saying, "So, now you're a king, as was your wish. I salute you from the dead. Hail Eldrad, king of nothing."
That's beautiful.
Owned. Drops the mic, walks off. And let's see. Well, the doctor is underneath the TARDIS console repairing it, or tinkering with it. Sarah says, "Oh, I must be mad. I'm sick of being cold and wet and hypnotized left, right, and center." Which, of course, was a nod because Sarah was always getting hypnotized, right? "I'm sick of being shot at, savaged by bug-eyed monsters, never knowing if I'm coming or going or been." The doctor replies, "Zeus plug." Sarah says, "Oh, I want a bath. I want my hair washed. I just want to feel human again." The doctor replies, "Forget the Zeus plug. I'll have the sonic screwdriver." And this really sets off Sarah. She says, "Oh, and boy, am I sick of that sonic screwdriver. I'm just going to pack my goodies and going home. And I'm going home. I said, I'm going to pack my goodies and I am going home, right? Excuse me." And she takes off, walks out of the room. The doctor replies, "What was that you..." I don't know why she goes on like this. There's really nothing the matter at all.
I have to bring this up because I meant to say it earlier. That scene where he hypnotizes her and she sees it coming, and she's like, "No, that's just not fair." And it's on. And he is he knows her mind. Yeah. It's the fastest mind meld you've ever seen. That's pretty good.
It was good. And then, there's one I didn't mention, one quote, but where she's like, "Eldrad must live." And the doctor replies, "What?" And she says, "Just testing." Messing with him. Just playing with him. I thought it was great. Sarah. All right, so what's your rating for this story, sir?
I'm going to give it a solid, I'll go 8.5. Poor old Driscoll's painted on the wall. It has some value to it. I think it's pretty run of the mill except for Sarah Jane leaving.
Yep.
But you'll remember it forever because of that. So, I mean, it's not a standout story, but it is because of that. So I would have given it a few more points if they'd have done a few things different here and there. But I liked it. It's solid.
Yeah, it was solid. All right, I'm just a little bit under you on this one. I'm giving it 8. I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. Reanimated Eldrad hands in a Tupperware container.
That's great.
Which is, I love this special effect because it was very simple, where you had a guy whose hand must have been underneath the flooring or whatever, the way they shot this, and like his hand was painted up like Eldrad, but then they glued on a part of a wrist to make it look like it was a disembodied hand, and his hand was underneath the whatever table or the bottom of the container, so it kind of looked like the hand was just a hand by itself. So I thought it was a very simple but a very effective special effect they did.
I thought they used the whole really dark shadow to kind of hide some of the green screening, but they did a really fine job with that. I would have rather
for
seen
1976. That. And a BBC budget. Yeah, they did.
I would have liked to have seen that finger grow back than suddenly appear.
Right.
That was all right. It had me convinced. I want to know how they got the ring off it.
It's a good question. Yeah.
She's off it, and Sarah Jane has it, but
maybe the ring let her take it.
Well, the master has a ring down the road somewhere, and when he gets cremated on the pyre that has his essence. So that's what the magic powers of that ring truly are.
Oh, you mean as Ming the Merciless ring? If you've ever seen the 1980 Flash Gordon, you know what I'm talking about?
Who hasn't? That's such a great movie, and I love when they revisit it in the movie Ted about how that movie's the greatest movie ever made.
Yep, it's a great movie. Zan Sprouse will back me up on this. She loves that movie.
I'm sure you're going to do that one Sunday, right?
We should. Yeah, we should definitely.
It's a great one to
It is a
discuss.
great one. It is a great one. All right, so reverse the polarity, because remember, we reversed the polarity, but now we're going to the future, so we're reversing it back again. We're confusing the polarities. So, for the sake of time, I'm going to keep this short. I'm not going to go into the full spiel, but I want to say if you enjoyed The Hand of Fear, I recommend, this one should be pretty obvious, School Reunion, because The Hand of Fear is the one where Sarah Jane departs the Doctor. It's the last time he sees her, and then School Reunion is where they reunite. Only now the Doctor's in his 10th incarnation, and she's years older. So we kind of, it kind of bookends that. So I recommend School Reunion. It's the third episode of Series 2 in 2006, written by Toby Whithouse, and features Rupert Giles from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, if you're at all familiar with this one. And, of course, gets the return of K9, which, was co-created by Bob Baker and Dave Martin, who wrote The Hand of Fear. And we get caught up, and Mickey ends up joining the TARDIS crew on Sarah Jane's recommendation. So, great episode all around. You get some great, cattiness between Sarah Jane and Rose over the Doctor until they finally bond over it and they start laughing at him. That was pretty good.
The buttons, too.
Yeah, and we get the sacrifice of K9 Mark III, only to get the introduction of K9 Mark IV, who goes off with Sarah Jane, and they, on the Sarah Jane Adventures TV series spinoff. So,
I found you bring up the K9 issue, and I know clearly she doesn't have a K9, but she does later on, and they never explain. But I did find it interesting that there was a dog waiting for her there.
Right.
K9 the sort.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Well, she has that. There was a dog. It wasn't K9, but yeah, you're right. That one where she steps out of the TARDIS, and talking about how the Doctor blew it because he didn't drop her off at South Croydon like she'd hoped. But
she brings it up in School Reunion.
She does.
She's you just let me. How do you recover from that?
You notice, it was 30 years. She still hadn't let that go. So
no. I mean, that's
here's a little tip for the guys out there in relationships with women. Women never forget. Never. Every time you screw up, they remember it.
I can't imagine they held her job. They probably had her, moved out of her apartment. She probably had to rebuild her life.
Yeah. That's not something you're going to get over very easily. And obviously, to some extent she hadn't until she got reunited with the Doctor and probably resolved some of her issues that she probably didn't even realize she had.
Yeah, you're right. She probably, you know how it is when you look back on people you haven't seen in a really, really long time, unless they really were a bad part of your life. You look back at all the good parts, but then when they're in front of you, you're like, oh yeah, there was this one irritating part.
Yeah. It kind of gets all the bad stuff kind of comes back up a lot of times. You kind of remember why you broke up in the first place, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this is why I recommend School Reunion, guys, because it fits perfectly, I think. So feedback. Well, obviously Dave's here. So he gets a pass. He doesn't have to do feedback this time because he talked the episode with me. So
I considered writing in just to mess this up.
You should have gone like, "Hey, future Dave, this is past Dave." One of these days I'm going to do that, by the way. Don't think I won't. But thankfully, of course, we have Holly Mack writing in once again. So Holly from Wisconsin, cheers to you for sending in feedback about The Hand of Fear. She writes in, "Hello all." Hello, Holly. Always a delight to hear from you. Forgot how good of an episode/story this was. Poor Sarah Jane getting possessed by Eldrad. The Doctor near the end talking to Eldrad to find out why they want revenge was a nice touch. She used the they, so she's going with the binary pronouns there. The costume for Eldrad was very cool looking. Yes, it was. Of course, Professor Watson would show up just when the Doctor and Sarah Jane had Eldrad convinced to leave, and then some chaos ensues. I like the desktop theme the Doctor chose to convince Eldrad in the TARDIS, and I love the nod to the temporal grace in the TARDIS. You mentioned those. I don't think the Doctor and Sarah Jane knew what to think when they faced Eldrad, or when they met face to face with the regenerated Eldrad. No love lost between Eldrad and Rokon. Eldrad will be in quite a surprise when he finds out there's no followers to be had to do his bidding. Yep. You're going to have to get your own damn beer out of the fridge, Eldrad. Sorry about your luck.
And the beer's a little old.
And the beer is 150 million years old, so it might be a little flat. Sorry. He's just like a toddler throwing around a temper tantrum. Yeah, he is. Whatever he reminds me of. I don't know. The ending with Sarah asking about if Eldrad survived is quite telling. Of course, the Doctor would be called back right when Sarah wants to head home. Good on the Doctor for not wanting her to face the Time Lords, because, as we've talked about here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Time Lords are dicks.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, there's very rare, with very few exceptions, the Time Lords are dicks. Yeah. They're jerks. Though I wonder what the Time Lords' plans, after all, to split the Doctor and Sarah Jane up. I guess, she's saying, I wonder if that was the plan all along, to split the Doctor and Sarah Jane up. Not sure if we find out for sure. So she's suggesting it could have been a Time Lord manipulation to split them apart.
Possibly.
Interesting. Fan theory. I hadn't considered that, but you might be onto something there, Holly.
Well, they have other humans visit in the future.
Yeah.
The Sixth Doctor. So they're not an absolute prohibition on aliens being on Gallifrey, but they didn't want her there, or he didn't want her there.
Right.
He may be going home for a scolding.
Yeah, I think it's more that the Doctor didn't want her there, but because he probably figures, well, every time they want to call me back to Gallifrey, it never goes well. So he probably was just playing the odds on that one. So Holly says, I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin. Thank you, Holly. Always delight to hear from you, like I said. And if you want to be like Holly or Dave when he's not here talking Doctor Who with yours truly, drop us a line, nextstopeverywhere.smg@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywhere.smg for Southgate Media Group @gmail.com. Or you can find us on Twitter @nextstopsmg on Twitter. Facebook, of course, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who Podcast, or Instagram @nextstopeverywhere podcast. And Dave, what are you up to? How can people get a hold of you when you're not here talking Doctor Who?
I am out there as David K. Proctor just about everywhere. Facebook, Gmail, all the ones, all the big ones. Twitter, Instagram. I'm on all of those. But I am more of a passive participant in those than anything, but I have been contacted by a few folks from the show.
Oh, great.
And Sprouse and I are now friends on Facebook.
That's great.
Yeah, it really is.
Zan's wonderful.
So if anyone wants to reach out, I'm not the font of wonderfulness some of you other guys are, but I do like having fans.
Oh, you got to give yourself more credit, Dave. You are completely font worthy.
Well, I just mean I don't have the look at that collection of comic books behind you. I don't have anything like that, but I do enjoy being part of this universe.
So, of course, as for me, You can find me at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram. Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio. And my blog of the geeky things. Wait for it.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere. So Doctor Who, Torchwood, The Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish, audios, and more. All kinds of comic book news, sci-fi news, news of my other podcasts that I do for the Southgate Media Group, including, well, hey, the Phantom Zone podcast, where DJ Nick and I just finished Loki, and he's already ready to turn the bus back over to me, and we're going to be talking, provided we can figure out Zan Sprouse joining us, because she wants to talk the Resident Alien pilot. So hopefully we can get that discussed within the next few weeks, because after that, Nick and I are going to be moving over to Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. We're going to be reopening Titans Tower, as Nick and I are going to be discussing Titan Season 3. We're trying to talk Jesse Jackson into joining us. So, Jesse, if you're listening, the door's wide open, waiting for you to walk right through it and join us once again on Titan Talk. And then Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast, where we've got a big 100th episode coming up. Now, Zan has been under the weather lately, so we've had to delay that recording, but we're planning on having DJ Nick join us there as well, and we're going to be watching the European version of the Twin Peaks pilot, the original Twin Peaks pilot, which has an alternate ending, and we're going to be doing a commentary version of that, so if you enjoy our commentaries, and this one's going to be relatively sober, so we might actually be able to talk more about what's actually going on screen than digressing, but hey, it's us, you know how that goes. So fingers crossed, but hopefully we'll be doing that soon, so stay tuned for that. And then last but certainly not least, Drunk Cinema, that Zan and I do as our side gig to Ghostwood. We recently talked Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and coming up next, hopefully this Friday, we're going to be recording in tribute to the late, great Richard Donner, who recently passed. We're going to be discussing Superman the movie, so the 1978 original Superman movie featuring Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent Superman, Margot Kidder as Lois Lane, Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor, and just a host of great actors. And Zan and I are on the record. This is both of our all-time favorite comic book movies ever to this day. And it's one of my all-time favorite movies, so we're going to be having a lot of fun with this one. And we encourage everyone here to check us out, and you'll have a good time as we kick back, enjoy adult beverages, and watch this together, and share our Superman fandom with all of you out there in podcast land. All right. So that's what I've got going on. Dave, anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, I'm going to visit with Happiness and Darkness with DJ Nick. I've been invited August 15th. I don't know what the turnaround time is, but that's the recording date.
He gets those out after he records them pretty quickly.
Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That's going to be a good one, yeah. I was just on recently, I don't know if anybody knows that we discussed Black Widow. I know Dave listened to that one. So he knows what a good time Nick and I had talking Black Widow with his friend Maz, who I met for the first time. I thought we had a really good discussion. I thought it turned out pretty well. So if you want, check out Nick's Happiness and Darkness podcast for the Black Widow episode, and also Dave's upcoming episode of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
I was hooked after listening to that. I've been toying with listening to some of his other podcasts, even though they're not right down my alley, like the country music one.
The Whiskey and Cigarette Show that he does, yeah.
And the Oscar movie one. But the Happiness in Darkness has got me hooked. I'm checking out all the back episodes. He's got some good ones.
All right, so that's what's going on with us. And next time on Next Stop Everywhere, we're going to wait 2 more weeks again because we're in the summer season. But joining us for episode 239 is the wonderful and, like I said, delightful Holly Mack, returning to Next Stop Everywhere to help me discuss, this is a good one, Asylum of the Daleks, which, of course, introduced Oswin Oswald, and with a very superb twist in this episode, and also briefly introduced Clara Oswin Oswald at the end of the story. So you got to tune in for that one, right? There's the Daleks from every era, but we also get to go into this Dalek asylum, which is shot so well and very creepy. And you know me, I love my creepy Doctor Who episodes. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. And I'm really glad that Holly's going to be joining us for that one. And I hope everybody tunes in.
It sounds like it's going to be a good one.
I think so. So, Dave, thank you so much. I hope you had a good time tonight, sir.
I had a blast. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me again. And
you're welcome back anytime, like I said.
Yeah, you've already got me on your schedule in the future out there.
That's right. You're not going to get away that easily.
This is a high point. I enjoy this. So thank you again for having me. And thanks for all that you do in the entertainment world. I put my headphones in at work when I can, and I'll listen to one of yours or one of those surrounding ones. I got a few that you guys don't have any part of, but I'm sure you'll get in them sooner or later. But yeah, I appreciate all that you do.
Yeah, we have a kind of a way of working our way into places now and then. But, you know, as long as they let us or aren't paying it too close of attention, we'll sneak in through the back door. But thank you for saying those kind words. I really appreciate it because it's listeners like you, Dave, that really make it worth it. Because, you know, I've been doing this for 7 years with Jesse, without Jesse, and it's still fun to me. I love talking Doctor Who with people, fellow fans. You know, ever since we started doing this, it really brought a great new dimension to the show, I think. Got people more involved. And, you know, especially when we're going through like hiatuses, like we're currently going through waiting for Series 13, which hopefully will turn up in, you know, a couple months in the fall, maybe. Fingers crossed. It keeps my fandom alive, my interest in Doctor Who alive, and I hope that comes off. And I hope everybody feels the enthusiasm that I do, you know, when I talk Doctor Who with people, and I hope everybody enjoys what we do. So that's me off my little soapbox, I guess.
Fandom's a big deal.
Guys, thank you so much for being a part of Next Stop Everywhere. Dave, thank you so much for contributing to what you do on the show, and look forward to having you come back on. Hopefully you'll be writing in the meantime, listening to us. And everybody else, come back 2 weeks, episode 239, Asylum of the Daleks, with yours truly, Holly Mack, and hopefully an email by Dave Proctor, fingers crossed. And we'll see you next time right here, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.